Natural disasters can have a negative impact on the environment around us, but not only that, it can impact on people. As you can see by this picture, it shows children with their families watching as their whole city just got destroyed by an earthquake that took place in 2010. Following that, according to College Board provided sources, it states that the Hilton earthquake compounded trauma for the nation. Additionally, this specific natural disaster led to around 1,200 deaths, which could be children's friends and families. But worst of all, 6,800 natural disasters happen per year worldwide, which leads us to the question, how do natural disasters inflict psychological trauma and mental stress on children? Hello, my name is Diego Morante, and my argument is how natural disasters inflicted psychological trauma and mental stress on children. As you can see by this graph, an average of 220,000 people died from a tsunami earthquake in Thailand, but there have been many more deaths, as you can see by the graph, during each and every natural disaster keeps piling up. This leads to many people passing away, such as family members, and in the unlikely chance you are ever in a horrible natural disaster, which happens to many young children all around the world, to where their parents pass away in the accident and all by themselves. This can cause a lot of mental stress and even psychological trauma for kids growing up. This can tie into what Linda Evans and Judy states, which is how natural disasters can lead to anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder in children. As you can see by this picture, it is a kid looking at the death of his parent passing away during a natural disaster. Adding on to that, this graph states that an enormous amount of $283 billion in economic loss from natural disasters in 2021 alone. Now, a major part of the money lost in natural disasters came from buildings, businesses, cars, etc. This can lead to poverty for most people due to the fact that they most likely lost their houses and cars. But worst of all, this can lead to arguments and mental stress from the parents, which can rub off on the kids to where they get mental stress, which can lead to psychological trauma. Furthermore, not only will the kid be dealing with mental stress from being with their parents, but also with what will be going on in their town, which would most likely be destroyed, depending on how horrible the natural disaster was. As you can see by these images, you can see that it is of kids crying after just being through a natural disaster, destroying everything, which will most likely cause mental stress and psychological trauma when growing up. Following that, many children will live in these conditions for many days, weeks, months, and even for some years. This can have a great effect on a children's mental stress when growing up, because with these conditions, it will be hard to pay attention to all the other people's misery and despair, but worst of all, going back to the place that used to be called home and the environment, on how horrible it will cause to their higher mental stress levels. But worst of all, having to live in these conditions, but without a home or mom and dad to call upon. Additionally, if the loss of the child's parents were to occur, then they would have to adopt to a new family from a foster system, which could take months or even years. Furthermore, as you can see by this graph, it demonstrates foster children compared to children who live with their families. And as you can clearly see, children that go into foster care end up having anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress, and last of all, more depression than the average child. And the unlikely chance that they get picked for a new home, it could take a while for their trauma to go away after the passing away of their parents and the destructive of the natural disaster cause. Adding on to that, during the natural disaster, there tends to be more injuries than deaths. Around 2 million people experienced injury in the past 10 years because of natural disasters. To go more into detail, as you can tell in this this child in this picture got slightly injured, but in many cases, children can get brain damage or even amputated, which will be because which will be something that will affect them for the rest of their life and can go on to cause psychological trauma, especially since these kids are not grown adults. In conclusion, as you can tell, natural disasters can cause many chain reactions, all leading to mental stress and trauma for children. The four main ways natural disasters can cause mental stress and trauma is number one, the loss of a parent. Number two, being sent to a foster home. Number three, having a horrible injury to where they will have to live with it for the rest of their life. And last of all, number four, to where parents go into poverty, which would cause the parents' mental stress to rub off on the child, as stated previously. Thank you. Any questions?
Two questions for you. First one, what evidence did you gather that you did not use, and why did you not use it?
I gathered evidence on how children were dealing with natural disasters when being already like amputated or like medical, like not having legs or not. And I didn't want to put that in my thing because it wouldn't relate to it because of it would have nothing to do with natural disaster and how it affects them because it's the same thing.
Okay. And if you had more time, what additional research would you conduct?
If I had more time, I would put more research into how it affects kids with special disabilities, because unlike normal kids with disabilities would probably like inflict more stress and trauma onto them and maybe want them to like pass away because of the loss.